The New York Mets set their opening day rotation, and top prospect Christian Scott had a dominant spring outing. I'll break all that down on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Christian Scott was the big story of the day on Wednesday. The Mets gave him his own spring start. So it was Scott on center stage, pitching in Jupiter. And I'll tell you what, this was just a well-done job by the Mets organization as a whole. We didn't see him in the spring breakout game, but as Scott alluded to after the start, he knew about this for some time, had a bullpen to prepare for it. This was, for one, a really nice thing that the Mets did for the kid because he grew up in the area, Coconut Creek, Parkland area. As I've mentioned in the past, I had the same pitching coach as Christian Scott. So I've known of him for a while because the pitching coach that I had was having a conversation with my dad, and he said, this guy's going to be the next Jacob deGrom. I've never actually said that into a microphone because it always felt crazy to say. And, you know, it's his pitching coach. He's going to talk him up. I would take what I just said still with a grain of salt. But when you watch the way he threw the ball against a major league lineup in a spring training game, you can see it. You can see this guy popping and having frontline stuff and being the ace of the Mets in 3 years. Will that be fully realized? Who knows? That's why scouts always temper things. That's why Baseball America says, you know, he has number 3 potential, because you don't want to get out in front and say he's going to be an ace. But he's got really good stuff. That fastball plays up in the zone. And now that he has developed a sweeper to give him a fourth pitch, because last year it was fastball, slider, changeup. Now it's fastball, slider, sweeper, changeup. But he's going to that sweeper even more than the slider, although sometimes, you know, what's categorized as a sweeper, what's categorized as a slider, how much do those, you know, pitch data, sites, how much does StatCast really pick up on those things? We'll never really know what was intended to be thrown, but the bottom line is he now has a 4-pitch mix. And the reason why I mentioned Parkland, Coconut Creek, the pitching coach, all of that is because Christian Scott, like I said, grew up in this area. And the Mets did a great job here because they let him know about this. They didn't go out and say, Christian Scott's going to start on this day. But behind the scenes, they let him know. And so he got to pitch in front of friends and family at this game in a ballpark that he grew up going to spring training his entire life. So as he said, it was a full circle moment for him to be pitching in this game. And there's adrenaline there. It might just be facing up against Vidal Brujan and Nick Gordon because, yes, Jazz Chisholm and Luis Ariz weren't in the lineup. Now there was Josh Bell or Jake Berger, but there was still guys with MLB experience in that lineup. He's pitching in that ballpark in front of his friends and family. That's a big moment for him where he could have shriveled or he could show up and use that adrenaline and dominate, and that is exactly what he did. And I think the perfect example of that was the at-bat against Nick Gordon in the first inning. He threw 4 straight fastballs. The first couple were, you know, pretty much dotted up and away in the strike zone. Gordon had no chance. He fouled one off. He swung through the other one. Then he throws another pitch where I feel like he was just a little bit amped. Looking at the pitch tracker after and then pairing that with my memory from watching the game, I believe he missed a spot and he just pulled it in. And it was a ball. It was in on Nick Gordon. He didn't swing at it. But then, again, it was just fastball up and away. This guy can't touch your fastball. Throw it there again. The fourth pitch, he hit his spot. Gordon swung through it. No chance. So you saw that level of just going out and getting those guys. He threw nothing but fastballs and changeups in that first inning, and mostly fastballs. Second inning, I did see a little bit of why he's not going to start the season with the big league club. There is still things to work on. The reason I say that is he did hang a slider to Avi Garcia, but it's Avi Garcia. And it's also, a hot, humid day in South Florida, it's tough to hit those balls out. And so Avi, hit the ball hard, but didn't hit it out. The next batter he faced, though, he threw a fastball that John Birdie fouled, was off the plate. Okay. He then dots a sweeper on the outside corner that was called for a strike. And then he buries a disgusting sweeper that Birdie just had no chance at. He offered at it, was nowhere near the zone, made him look silly. Another strikeout. Struck out the final batter of that inning. Through the first 4 innings, he had through the first 2 innings, he had 4 strikeouts. Bottom of the third, Christian Betancourt hit a ball pretty well off him to lead off the inning. Fastball high. Again, another one where, different ballpark, different conditions, it might have gone. He kind of got under it, but did hit the ball hard. Then Trey Mancini walks up, and he makes him look stupid as well. Just buckled him on a couple of sliders to start off the at-bat in the zone, gets the strike calls. And then now he's ahead 0-2. Mancini clearly wasn't seeing the pitch well, but he's got to get the bat off his shoulder. Throws another one way out of the zone. No chance he could hurt him on it, and he flails at it, strikes him out. Then he gave up a home run to Jonah Bride. I am trying to temper things a little bit and explain why there's still some refining that needs to be done despite how good he looked in this start. So the at-bat against Bride. Gets ahead 0-2. Then he missed bat on a couple of fastballs. So that evens the count. He goes back to the sweeper and hangs one. Right down the middle. Guy hits it out. But he came right back and struck out the next hitter. Then in the 4th inning, gave up a leadoff single, got an out on a really nice play by Zach Short, where Scott kind of goes to try to field the little popped up ground ball. One of those in-between plays that's really hard to make. Zach Short, who was playing second base, comes in on it, fields it with his glove, didn't have time to make a transfer, just backhand shovel tossed it to first, gets the out. Really nice play. And then Avi Garcia comes up, and he hits one on a line at 107.4 miles per hour. But Zach Short was there. He caught it. And then John Birdie came up, couldn't touch his fastball in that at bat. He strikes him out. So throughout the 4 innings, again, 7 strikeouts, 2 hits, the 1 run allowed on the home run, no walks. He threw 59 pitches, 44 were strikes. This kid pounds the zone. With that said, I looked at every single at bat again. I identified 10 non-competitive pitches. Now, those are pitches. Sometimes, pitches out of the zone can be competitive. Guys swing at it, right? So if there's a sweeper that's out of the zone, he's trying to get a swing and miss, okay. But I'm talking about fastballs or changeups that completely missed. The reason why I mentioned those, that's the little things that can be improved upon. It's nothing crazy. And he hung a couple sliders, a couple of breaking balls. I think he's really close. I've said it all off season. His fastball has been big league ready. It's about having other pitchers to pair with it. And the fact is, from the last we saw him in Double-A last year to where he's at now, he has made huge improvements, adding that sweeper and just refining his offering. And I think he's very, very close. And honestly, let's just say first month of the season, 2 starters go down and they need an arm. Put Christian Scott in the rotation because he's going to give you results. And I think he could hang in the big league rotation right now. But why wear those bad results that he might get when he does hang a sweeper? Because he's still, it's a new pitch to him. Why have that happen on, a big league mound when it can happen in Triple-A when you also have plenty of MLB caliber starters ready to go? So I get why he didn't make this team, but you're going to see Christian Scott this year one way or the other because his stuff is too good to be sitting in Triple-A all season. You're wasting bullets in some respects to have him spend the entire year in Triple-A. He's just too good for that. His fastball was sitting 95, 96 throughout the game. It averaged at 95.5 miles per hour. He maxed out at 97. That fastball, this is great stat to look at. How many times did this swing at the pitch? 19 times. He got 7 whiffs on his fastball, 8 foul balls. Only 4 out of 19 swings were put into play. So let's just round it up and say, 4 out of 20 would be, oh God, here comes the math again. 20%, 20% of the time they're able to put the ball in play. Basically, that's showing how dominant that fastball truly is. And then you got a lot of whiffs on the sweeper and the slider. You combine the 2 pitches, 4 whiffs on 7 swings, change up, gives him a 4th pitch. Like I said, he is really close to being there. And honestly, again, in a different circumstance, let's just say Christian Scott was a prospect on the White Sox. Hell, he might be the opening day starter, as Garrett Crochet can tell you. But, he would make the team, I think. And it's not to say, oh, well, if he would make another team, why can't he make this rotation? The fact is, you have depth built here. You can't just cut Adrian Hauser so that Christian Scott can be in this rotation. But I'm telling you that his stuff is very close to being able to play at the big league level. I think getting that time in Triple-A is going to be good for him. It's going to be nice that he can face a level that he hasn't yet, because that's still another box he hasn't checked off. He hasn't pitched in Triple-A. So to go up to Triple-A, to spend the first month of the season there, get a handful of starts. But if the Mets need an arm at some point, they have Jose Butto waiting in the wings. We're going to talk about that next. He was optioned down, but he's the sixth starter right now for sure. Well, Christian Scott very well could be used early this season if the Mets get to a point where a couple of their starters aren't working out well, a couple of guys get hurt, and they want an upside arm in that rotation. Let's say Joe Lucchese's not throwing the ball well. I would not be surprised at all if this happens early. And I also, one of the bold predictions I did not make in my minor league bold predictions episode, I tossed it around in my head. And I just want to say it now, call it a prediction or not, whatever. I don't know if this happens, but I would not be surprised if Christian Scott has 10 holds this year, because we saw Corbin Burnes early in his career pitch out of the bullpen. I wouldn't be surprised if David Stearns at some point says, you know what? Those are MLB caliber innings that he's pitching down there. The guy that has, somewhat of an innings count that you'd have to watch this year. He didn't even get to 90 innings pitched last year. So what are the Mets going to set that line at? Maybe 120 max is my guess. Maybe a little bit more, but just my guess. I wouldn't be surprised at all if by the end of the season he is a weapon out of the bullpen too. I think that's another route that Christian Scott could go on to make it up to the big leagues, and then eventually next year be stretched out again to be a starting pitcher. But really exciting to see him get that opportunity, to see him show up, and it was a lot of fun to watch on TV. So anyway, I want to discuss the Mets setting the rotation for the rest of the show today. And in the next segment, particularly the decision to option Jose Butto. We'll go through when we can see Butto again and why they made this call in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. Whether it's the opening weekend for baseball or the college basketball tournament, you're going to want to have a Fire TV. And Fire TV recently added Fire TV channels. Deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, all for free. That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TVs let you dive into all the game analysis, highlights, and more. Keep up to date with everything going on in the world of sports. Check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/LockedOnFireTV. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, and you can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com and bet on college hoops till they cut the nets down. Also, right now, you can bet on MLB futures as well. So if you want to bet on the Mets to hit their over-under on the win total at 81.5, you can do so there. You can bet on Pete Alonso's over-under on his home run total at 41.5. And again, you place that $5 bet, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Before we discuss Jose Butto, a couple more game notes that actually jogged down here. First, on the hitters, Brandon Nimmo 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and a walk. Good game for him. He's had a little bit of a slow start to camp, but a nice big performance here. DJ Stewart in the DH competition, not faring well. He went 0 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout. But with that said, G-Man Choi went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. So not good for anybody. And even further than that, Luke Voigt 0 for 2 with a walk and an RBI. Sack fly, if I'm not mistaken. So good day for Voigt. Still don't think he makes the team. I'm still sticking with my prediction that Choi is going to make it, but it is an uninspiring competition, I would say, at this stage. Joey Wendell, hit a day at least for Wendell. 1 for 2, scored 2 runs. I got to say, that hit, man. It was a double, I guess. A ground ball that Trey Mancini should have fielded. A good first baseman gets there. I'm just going to say it. It's not just my Joey Wendell bias. And gets down the line into, I believe it was the Marlins bullpen, might have been the Mets bullpen, whoever's bullpen it was. They're still got the bullpen down the line in Jupiter, and it gets caught behind the chairs. Ground ruled double. Joey Wendell, man. Zach Short, as I mentioned, made a couple nice plays in the field, went 1 for 2 with 2 walks, had an RBI double for that hit, scored a couple runs. Nice game from him. Edwin Diaz had a rough outing. He walked a couple, got a strikeout, ended up at 21 pitches, and they pulled the hook on him. Then a run came in after he left. The only other major league potential reliever that got in that game was Phil Bickford. He pitched a scoreless inning, got a strikeout. It was a 1-2-3 frame, but I will say 2 of those outs were hit pretty well. All right, let's get to the Jose Butto story. So he was finally sent down, came down to the final week for the Mets to make that decision. The way they announced the decision, it's very clear that they were trying to pick between McGill and Butto ultimately is the roster casualty here. But there's already some talk about getting it back up for some spot starts. The first one that you can circle is the one that I discussed on a show. I'm trying to think when exactly it was. It was definitely last week or so here, where I went through the schedule a little bit and I was trying to map out, because of the days of rest the Mets have, when they would need a 6th starter or when guys would have to start to pitch on regular rest. So the game that you can look at and say this might be Jose Butto's 2024 debut start, it would be April 10th against the Atlanta Braves. Rough draw there, and that's in Atlanta. But every other start before that, guys will have an extra day rest. Luis Severino would have to take the ball there on regular rest, and that's where the Mets could insert Butto. It's right in the middle of a span where they play 13 games in 13 days. So they could keep the 6-man rotation, and there would be one more start that he could make during that span to keep Severino getting that extra day rest to get through that month, if the Mets choose to do that. But they also could, set him down and set him right back up for a spot start if he's replacing an injured player. As we've learned from Billy Epler, you got to be careful in that regard. Here's the one thing that I was curious about, because you always hear about options, right? The guy has one option, and at the end of camp, they just option Butto down. That was his last option. I should have looked this up a long time ago. It is very simple, but for those of you who aren't aware what the rules are, here is how the option system works. A player's on the 40-man roster, but does not open the season. The 26-man roster or the injured list must be optioned to the minor leagues. Knew that part. Once an option player has spent at least 20 days in the minors in a given season, he loses one of his options. So if that first start on April 10th comes within the first 20 days of the season, Jose Butto would not lose his option yet. If he then stuck in the rotation for the rest of the season, he would hold on to that option going into next year. But if he spends 20 days in the minor leagues, which Butto will, he's going to lose that option. But only one minor league option is used per season, regardless of how many times a player is optioned to and from the minors. So this is an option year for Jose Butto. I guess that's the better way to think about it, which means he can go up and down to make spot starts throughout this season. But there is one caveat to it, because at certain points, a guy is out of those options, right? And then you say, oh, here it is in September. The Mets have to try to pass Jose Butto through waivers. They have to DFA him. Why? If a player has been optioned 5 times per season, that's the max. So if Jose Butto goes up and down for that start on April 10th, and they send him back down because they want an extra arm in the bullpen, but then in a week they want him again. Well, that's 2 of those 5 options. So that's how you have to play that game. with Butto throughout the season to preserve him. Otherwise, you run out of those 5 options, and then you would have to designate him for assignment where he ends up on waivers, and you see what happens from there. So I hope that helps some people who are confused by the option system. I've always been a little bit confused by it. Makes a little more sense now, but that's where the Mets are at with Jose Butto. He is absolutely the 6th starter on the depth chart right now. He's just going to spend the beginning of the season in Syracuse until the Mets need a 6th starter. And if they want to go to a 6-man rotation before Kodai Senga comes back, I would not be surprised. That might just be something they eventually go to. They let some of these relief options sort of sort themselves out, and then they might stick with the 6-man. Of course, also, if guys aren't performing well, Butto could also grab somebody else's spot. So maybe he makes a spot start, does well. Tyler McGill has been terrible through his first 3 turns in the rotation. Maybe he's the one that ends up getting optioned at a certain point. We'll see. I think if you were to set the over-under on amount of starts that Jose Butto makes this year, if I was setting the line, I'd set it at about 11.5. And I don't know if I would take the over or the under, because I could see him making 12. I could see him making 10. So, or 11. But we'll see what happens there. We'll see how Butto's season ends up, coming together. But he's going to have a role for sure. And if I set the innings, I imagine he's going to give you more than 42 innings, which is what he pitched last year. I think he might give you, north of 70, 80 innings potentially. So there you go. Man, if he only makes 10 starts, that'd be a lot of innings pitched. So maybe I'm taking the over on the starts. Regardless, let's talk about the actual rotation the Mets are going to break camp with here. I'll get into that in just a minute. First, though, today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Testing your skills on PrizePicks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because if you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps, because it's daily fantasy sports made easy, where you pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Right now, you have the MLB season stats that you can play. So go to MLB season. There's a tab for it. It is listed as MLB SZN. And you can find the season stat projections like Pete Alonso's RBIs at 108.5. Take more on that. Maybe you'll take more on Matt Olson at 109.5. And Mike Trout at 94.5. Maybe take less. He might get hurt this year. Combine those to win big. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code, all in lowercase, LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. We are a week away from opening day, which makes now the perfect time to become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you're going to get lineups sent directly to your phone each day during the season. So you'll know who the starting 9 is. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also get updates anytime a player gets hurt, someone gets called up, sent down, whatever it is, I'll send updates. And this is where we are running our giveaways for this season. The first giveaway is a good one. Signed photo of Brett Beatty. I didn't want to give this away. Part of me wanted to keep it, but you know what? I figured to start the season off, I'll give away the most prized signed photo I got here among the stack that I'm going to be giving out throughout the year. And if you want to be part of that giveaway, you just got to become a Locked On Mets insider, and more information will come to those who are subscribed early next week, as I'll be giving away that photo on Thursday. All right, let's talk about this starting rotation now. It's the guys that we thought it was going to be, but the order is interesting. So Tyler McGill makes the team over Jose Butto. Figured that. Jose Quintana's got the opening day now. We've known that. Luis Severino will be the second starter in line, but McGill's actually going to start third. And the reason being, the Mets saw the numbers last year. The Brewers very good against left-handed pitching, and they only got better by adding Rhys Hoskins this offseason. So they didn't want to stack 2 lefties in that first series. Makes sense. McGill will start, and then Minaya will start against the Tigers on April 1st, the second series of that 6-game homestand. Now let's talk a little bit about the 6-man rotation. Okay, so you got that series against the Tigers. They then go to Cincinnati and then to Atlanta. And that stretch beginning in Cincinnati is a 13-game and 13-day stretch. Everybody gets days off before April 10th because You have that day off that's always baked into the schedule on Friday in case there's a rain out after the opening day on Thursday. So everybody but Quintana should, get a day there. Or actually, excuse me, Quintana gets a day there is actually what it really is. Everyone gets a day on that Thursday. So Quintana would start on April 3rd, having gotten the day off after his opening day start. Then everybody else gets a day off. So that's where you get to April 10th, being the first time a starter would have to go on a regular rest because Luis Severino will start against the Reds on the 5th. Then he'd have to turn around and start against the Braves on the 10th. That's where you can insert Butto. Severino would then start the final game of that series. The Mets come home. They play the Royals and the Pirates. There's no days off. So again, if Butto is optioned, Severino would eventually have to start on regular rest on the 16th. If the Mets don't want to do that, which I understand, giving him extra rest might preserve him for a long season. You keep Butto in that rotation, and then Sevy starts on the 17th. And you have a couple of off days where you wouldn't really need anybody. You have 2 Thursdays off in a row on the 18th and the 25th. That's because the Mets have a West Coast trip. So they get an off day, travel to play the Dodgers, then they play the Giants, and they come home and have an off day after that, 6-game West Coast swing. Then have, we're not going to get into the entire schedule, but an interesting note too, just looking at this. They play the Braves in April, but no other team in their division. You go to May, and they do finally have a series against a lot of these teams, but still no Nationals. So there's a stretch starting on May 10th where they play the Braves at home, the Phillies, and they have a home and home sort of. It's 2 games in New York, 2 games in Philly. So it's kind of a 4-game series. How do they break that up? Is it a 4-game set? Is it it's kind of cool. It's like a Subway series, but it's against the Phillies. That'll be fun. Then they come down and play in Miami, but still no Nationals. I like this schedule for that because they'll play the Nationals for the first time on my dad's birthday, June 3rd, which will be a lot of fun. And I say that because we're actually going to that series. But they'll play the Nats, and then they have the London series. So they'll have 2 days off. They'll play the Phillies for 2 games in London, another day off. Then they come home, play the Marlins again. You see the Nationals a lot in July. But the interesting thing here, I look at this June schedule because June killed the Mets last year. You got Washington, you got Miami, but you also got the Yankees, the Astros, Padres, who could be good, the Rangers, the Cubs in Chicago. I don't know, man. I don't like in June. July, I like better. July eases up. You got Nationals, Pirates, Nationals again, Rockies. That's the stretch right there. July 1st to the 14th, we're going to be living. That leads right into the All-Star break. Then you come out of the break, you go into Miami for 4 games as well. And then you play the Yankees, the Braves, Twins to close out the month. But hey, if the Mets can, go on a run there in early July, maybe they'll be buyers at the deadline. I'm trying to see when they're done with the Braves. Are they done with the Braves? Did they not play? Oh, okay. So they only play the Braves in the final 2 months of the season. They play the Braves the last week for 2 games in Atlanta. Couple days off sandwiched in between there. Day off on Monday, 2 games in Atlanta. Day off on Thursday. I don't know why I'm already doing the math in my head, but I'm counting a wild card race where the Mets lose a half game on the 23rd when they don't play. They lose 2 games against the Braves, and they lose another one on the 26th. And if that actually, or a half game on the 26th, and it's 3 games lost going into their final series in Milwaukee, and that series doesn't matter. Man, I just lived it all out as a Mets fan. And if that all happens, and I predicted it on March 21st, you are all free to just come down my throat for, if any of you remember this, 6 months from now. But it's going to be a fun season. We're a week away from opening day. The rotation's set. The lineup pretty much set outside of John Heyman, who likes to consistently mention that the Mets are still in on JD Martinez. Like he's not just tweeting that out for Scott Boras or saying it into microphones for Scott Boras. Other than that, I mean, there's really not much else that we have to look forward to here over the next week as far as spring training battles. We know the rotation. The bullpen spots are going to be interesting, but it's kind of anyone's guess what's going to happen there. And it's just a matter of who they're going to pick to grab that last bench spot. But I think we're in for a really fun year, and I cannot wait for it to start. tomorrow's show, one of two options. I have yet to ask Arm Layton about this, but it would be great to get him on to talk some prospects before the season. He is our prospect expert at Just Baseball. I think he's not going to any spring training games, so I might be able to grab him. I haven't asked him yet, but we'll see. If not, talking to Arm, I will do my bold predictions for the MLB roster. So I already did it for the minor league roster last week. We'll do bold predictions for the MLB squad, and then we'll be all set for the season to begin next week. Can't wait. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for making this your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, head over to Locked On Sports today to check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube covering everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team, our league-wide experts from each league. You find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.